Welcome to Film and Page. I'm Dominic, and in this video I'm going to be talking about the 2017 book, The Reluctant Queen, Book 2 of the Queens of Renthia, written by Sarah Beth Durst. So this is the second book in a trilogy, and I just recently reviewed the first book. So there's going to be spoilers in this if you haven't read the first book. So spoiler warning right now. So this book picks up after the events of the second one, obviously, and Delena is now Queen of Arete, and using all of her powers to protect people from the spirits of nature and all that kind of thing. But she was actually the weakest candidate out of all the candidates that were able to replace Queen Farah. But because of the catastrophe that struck and all the other heirs were wiped out, she was the only one left, so they had no choice but to make her queen. So she was the weakest one, so she's a very weak queen. And this is something I actually like about the character, is the main character in this series is actually quite the underdog. So on top of her being weak, now she has succumbed to some strange illness in the second book, where she blacks out. And when she blacks out, she can't control the spirits, so people get attacked by the spirits. So it's becoming a very dangerous situation for the people of Arete, and they don't know what's causing the illness, and the illness is killing her. So now the champion Ven, he has to find an heir to replace her right away, or somehow to make up for this her lack of ability to control the spirits. So during one of her blackouts, while he's on his quest, they're in this village, and the village gets attacked by spirits, and this is where they discover this woman named Neelan. And they discover she is very powerful and has a lot of power to control the spirits. But she's in her middle ages, and she's a mother, and she's married to a woodsman and has a family, and really doesn't want anything to do with becoming a queen or anything like that. That isn't a desire of hers. But seeing how powerful she is, Ven convinces her, along with her husband, because he's a bit of a putz, her husband Renette. They try to convince her that she really needs to become queen. Arete really needs her because she's so extremely powerful. So eventually she does decide to go with that and takes her children, and they go to the main palace or kingdom area in Arete. And so what I like about this book is the character of Delena in the first book was like the weakest one. So this kind of flips it around, where Neelan is actually extremely powerful but doesn't want anything to do with being a queen. Because she's an interesting character because she's older. She's in her, she's middle-aged. She has a family, and so she has this good life she doesn't want to give up. But she eventually succumbs to that because duty calls. And then that's why the title of the book is The Reluctant Queen, because the character of Neelan, she is the reluctant queen. She doesn't want to be queen. Now, why this was, I think, the best book in the trilogy was because this is where things really heat up in the trilogy. Because you have the character of Mirkat comes back into the story, and she is now the queen of the country of Simo. Now, Simo is very different from Arete. It's a very rocky country, where Arete is lots and heavily forested and stuff like that. So she actually wants to invade Arete and take it over for her own. So she actually wants to occupy both kingdoms, Simo and Arete. So you have this really big war that takes place, and then you have the mystery of this illness that's keeps causing Queen Delena to black out and is slowly killing her. So you have this mystery going on. They're trying to unravel exactly what is causing this illness. So that's another interesting part of the story. And the other thing about this book is this is where it really hit home that there is something more to the wolf character of Bane. What that is, it doesn't say, but it didn't really hint too much at it in the first book, and this one it heavily implies there's something more to that character. He's not just an ordinary wolf, and that's actually part of the cliffhanger at the end of the book. Actually has something to do with the wolf, and that's the other cool thing about this book. It has a really good cliffhanger. It ends with a situation that really makes you want to go on and read the last book in the trilogy. So the other thing about this book, and it's something I talked about with the first book, is the author of this book really does a good job of painting a good picture of what this world is like. and how the magic system works. It's very clear cut. You know exactly what the queens can do and what they can't do. So I really appreciate that. And again, some of the characters, my favorite characters in this series is Mircott. She makes for a really good antagonist. And there's this kind of back and forth because she's the enemy of Delena, but they used to be friends in the academy, so you have that kind of a situation going on. And then also the character of Neelan. That was kind of unique for a fantasy character because she's a mother of kids, so she seems more grounded, more down to earth, like just a regular person that got pulled into this situation. So, and there's a few new characters that get introduced into the story too to kind of fill out the cast that are very interesting as well. And so as far as the story goes, this one was actually quite the page turner. It was much better than the first book, where I found the first book kind of dragged and I wasn't really sure if I was going to continue the series or not, just based on that first book. Now the first book does get to a point where it does pick up, and because you have like this conspiracy going on in the first book that kind of moves everything along. You want to know what's going on with that. So, but this one is much, much better. This is a much better book. This one, I was really glued to this one and just couldn't stop reading it. Just wanted to get to the end to see where all this was heading. And so that was the cool part about this book. And again, I like the world that it's set in because I've been trying to get more into this high fantasy stuff. So some of the problems I had with some of the books I've read in the past, they were D&D based and like Forgotten Realms type stuff. They always felt very derivative, like just Lord of the Rings knockoffs, I guess. Now, I'm not saying some of those books can't be good or can't be entertaining, because some of them can. It's just the particular ones I read, I guess. And then the magic systems seem to be kind of like all over the place, where this one, it's very defined what the magic system is. So I like that about the book. And another thing about these books, now this is a problem I have with some of the fantasy books that I've read in the past, and there's one in particular that I'm thinking of, is that these books aren't overly long. Like this one is just under 400 pages. It's like 300 and something pages, and they're all roughly about that length. Because there was a book, one in particular that I'm thinking of, it was called The Outstretched Shadow. I read it quite some years ago, probably almost 20 years ago now. And it was one of those high fantasy books. And it was kind of like the Lord of the Rings type deal, where you had elves and humans and dwarves and all that kind of stuff going on in the book. But I found it was really long, and it took a long time to get to the point of the story. And it turned me off. It was the first, I think, in a trilogy of books. But it actually turned me off from pursuing the rest of the series. If I remember, the setup for the story was there was two kinds of magic in this world. There was the high magic that the city people used that was very structured and very disciplined, and then there was this magic that was forbidden. It was called wild magic. That was crazy people practiced that lived out in the woods. So the main character, he somehow gets banished from his city kingdom, and then he goes off into the forest and ends up running across his sister. And she practiced this wild magic, this forbidden magic. So she starts teaching him this magic. But there was chapter after chapter after chapter after chapter of just them living in the woods, not really doing anything. Like the story came to a grinding halt. Like a chapter of them cooking stews, of them capturing a deer. And then they would throw in some of his training with the magic. But it just went on and on and on and on and on. And it felt like they were just padding out the book. There was a lot of chapters like that, and it just turned me off from reading the rest of it. So I remember I just read the first book in that series, and I never went on forward with it again. And then there was actually another fantasy book that did the same thing. And but that's what I liked about these particular books, is they don't feel padded out. Like the story just keeps clipping along at a decent pace, and nothing in there feels like filler. So I really appreciate that about these books. So again, this is a good fantasy series that if you want to get into high fantasy, this would actually be a pretty good place to start, because they're not long reads. The story is pretty solid, and the second book is really good. So that's everything I got to say in this video. Let me know what you think in the comment section, and I will see you at the next one. I'd like to say thank you to all of my subscribers. I appreciate you all in helping this channel grow. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, don't forget to hit the bell icon so you'll be notified when new videos are uploaded.